The real worry is not simply that grocery prices keep rising. It is realizing you waited until everyone else had the same idea. Canadians have seen how quickly ordinary shelves can change, whether during the 2020 disruptions, winter storms in Ontario and Quebec, wildfire evacuations in the West, or supply delays after major road and rail interruptions. The issue wasn't that Canada ran out of food overnight. The issue was timing. When millions of households suddenly decide to buy the same basics, or the cheapest options disappear first, and the remaining choices cost more. So, this is not a panic list, and it is not a fantasy survival plan. It is a practical Canadian pantry strategy for people who want fewer expensive last-minute trips to Loblaws, No Frills, Costco, Sobeys, Metro, Walmart, or Bulk Barn. I'm not giving you 50 items that make preparation feel impossible, just 6 foods. Before June 1st, 2026, if I had to prioritize only 6 dependable foods for a Canadian kitchen, these are the ones I would keep first, because they help protect your budget, stretch meals, and keep the household steady when weather, prices, or supply chains become less predictable for many Canadian families. 6. Iodized salt. There is something odd about a Canadian grocery aisle. The items that get the loudest attention are the expensive ones: beef, coffee, eggs, butter, canned salmon, frozen meals, and anything sitting under a bright sale tag at Loblaws, No Frills, Sobeys, Metro, Walmart, Costco, or real Canadian superstore. Yet one of the most important pantry items often sits quietly on a lower shelf, costing only a few Canadian dollars. Most shoppers walk right past it without thinking twice. That item is iodized salt. If meat jumps again, you notice it immediately. If eggs rise a few dollars a carton, the receipt shouts. But when a household runs low on salt, the problem does not feel urgent at first. It arrives slowly. Meals taste flat. Beans feel harder to finish. Rice becomes dull. Soup loses depth. And during a long winter storm, a summer heat wave, or an Ontario or Quebec ice storm outage, that plain box of salt suddenly feels much less ordinary. Salt is not just seasoning. It is part of how the body manages fluid and mineral balance. During hot weather, heavy sweating, stomach illness, poor appetite, or days when someone is barely eating, the body does not need water alone. It also needs minerals, and sodium is one important part of that system. For many people over 50, dehydration, low food intake, heat stress, or disrupted routines can affect energy and balance faster than expected. This is not about turning salt into medicine.
It is about understanding that a kitchen without salt is weaker than it looks.
In Canada, the risks are not theoretical. In winter, storms can close roads, delay trucks, and leave homes relying on simple pantry meals. In summer, wildfire smoke, evacuations, heat warnings, and regional supply delays can make routine shopping less predictable. When electricity, gas, transportation, and grocery prices all feel less stable, salt stops being a side item. It becomes part of the basic kitchen system. The strongest thing about salt is its stability. Kept dry, sealed, and away from moisture, salt can remain usable for years without refrigeration, electricity, or complicated rotation. Compare that with fresh milk, meat, produce, or frozen food. Those items depend on a cold chain and a working refrigerator. Salt only asks for one thing: keep it dry. That is why it belongs in a serious pantry, even though it looks too simple to impress anyone. With iodized salt, however, one detail matters. The salt itself is very stable, but the iodine can slowly decline over time, especially if the container is left open, stored near heat, or exposed to humidity. That does not mean you should buy one giant supply and forget about it for a decade. A smarter Canadian pantry approach is to buy a practical amount, store it properly, and rotate it through everyday cooking. Preparation should reduce waste, not create a museum of untouched food. Storage is simple, but it deserves attention. Do not keep salt beside the sink, near a steamy kettle, beside a hot stove, in a damp basement corner, or by a window where condensation builds. If you buy a larger bag from Costco or Bulk Barn, do not leave it sitting for months in thin paper or loose packaging. Moisture can cause clumping and make it harder to use. Divide it into clean glass jars, airtight plastic containers, food storage containers, or small mylar bags with tight lids.
Keep one container near the stove for daily use and store the rest in a cool, dry, dark, clean place.
Iodized salt also provides iodine, a mineral connected to thyroid function and metabolism. That does not sound as dramatic as a case of canned meat or a 10-kilogram bag of rice, but it matters over time. Many pantry plans focus only on calories, protein, or how many cans are stacked on a shelf. The body is not simple. It also depends on small, quiet nutrients that are easy to overlook until something feels off. Salt also protects the usefulness of every other food you store. A pot of beans without enough seasoning may be nutritious, but try eating it day after day when you are already tired. Plain rice can fill the stomach, but it becomes discouraging fast. Boiled vegetables without salt may be technically edible, but they can make a meal feel like punishment. In a real disruption, the question is not only whether food exists. The question is whether people in the house will keep eating it. Salt helps turn basic food into meals people can actually finish. The common mistake is buying rice, oats, beans, canned goods, peanut butter, and powdered milk, while leaving one half-empty salt container at the back of the cupboard. That is like building a pantry and forgetting the switch that makes the whole system easier to use. You do not store iodized salt because it is exciting. You store it because it is cheap, stable, useful, and practical. When grocery prices rise and Canadian weather interrupts normal routines, a few dollars of salt can help keep the kitchen steady, balanced, and far less bland. 5. OATS. There was a man in Ontario who once felt very confident about his pantry. The shelves looked full, the basement storage looked organized, and he joked with his wife that if a storm shut everything down, they could manage for weeks. Then an ice storm moved through. The lights went out. The electric stove stopped working. The fridge became a countdown clock. By the second morning, he learned something almost embarrassing. The house did not lack food. It lacked food that could be prepared quickly with limited heat, limited water, and limited patience. Dry beans needed soaking. Frozen meat needed cooking before it spoiled. Some meals required a full stove and a quiet afternoon. What saved breakfast was not the most expensive item in the pantry. It was oats. That is why oats matter in a Canadian kitchen. A serving can usually be cooked in about 5 minutes with roughly 250 milliliters of water or milk. Even with a small camping stove, a kettle, or a single burner, oats do not ask for much. Compare that with dry beans, tougher grains, or frozen foods that need longer cooking, more fuel, and more attention. In normal times, oats are convenient. During a winter outage, wildfire evacuation warning, high grocery bill week, or fuel-saving stretch, they become strategy. A large bag of rolled oats from Costco, No Frills, Walmart, Real Canadian Superstore, or Bulk Barn can make many breakfasts for a relatively low price in Canadian dollars. A box of cereal may look easy, but it can disappear in a few mornings, especially if grandchildren are visiting, or the household is larger. Oats stretch further. They are not flashy, but they are one of those foods where the value becomes clearer after a month of receipts, not after one shopping trip. Their strength is not only price. Oats provide complex carbohydrates, beta-glucan fiber, magnesium, manganese, and some plant-based protein. Beta-glucan helps create a steadier feeling of fullness, which matters when food prices are high and snacking becomes expensive. For people over 50, a breakfast that is warm, gentle, filling, and easy to digest has real value. It does not make the body spike and crash like a sugary pastry or a bowl of sweet cereal. It starts the day more calmly. Oats also solve a problem people rarely mention. Mornings become stressful fast when routines break. When the power is out, the house is cold, the news is talking about closed highways, and everyone is wondering whether the supermarket trucks will arrive on time. A simple breakfast can keep the household from feeling chaotic. A warm bowl of oats is not just calories. It tells the brain that the day still has structure. For older adults, children, or anyone already tired from poor sleep, that sense of normal routine matters more than people admit. They are also flexible. You can cook oats with water, mix them with shelf-stable milk, powdered milk, or regular milk. If the fridge is still working, you can add peanut butter, honey, maple syrup, raisins, dried apples, cinnamon, nuts, seeds, or canned fruit. You can make overnight oats to save fuel. You can blend oats into smoothies, grind them into flour, add them to muffins, or use them as a binder in simple cooking. One bag can become many different meals, which helps prevent the quiet enemy of stored food: boredom. Storage is easy, but not automatic. Leaving oats in thin paper or plastic packaging in a damp basement, hot garage, or open cupboard is a mistake. Moisture, insects, and strong odors can ruin them. A better approach is to transfer rolled oats into airtight containers, food-grade buckets, glass jars, or mylar bags. Then keep them in a cool, dry, dark place.
Traditional rolled oats are usually more useful than flavored instant packets because they cost less per serving, contain less sugar, and give you more control.
Oats are not dramatic. Nobody feels like a survival expert after buying them. But that is exactly their power. They turn a few minutes, a little water, and a small pot into a warm meal when electricity is limited and everyone is hungry. They also help stretch other pantry foods, because a spoonful of peanut butter, a handful of dried fruit, or a splash of milk can turn plain oats into something that feels complete. In Canada, a prepared pantry is not about panic. It is about having calm options when weather, prices, and routines stop cooperating for more than one cold morning. 4. Powdered milk. Powdered milk is not the product most Canadians reach for with excitement. In many homes, fresh milk feels normal, especially in Ontario and Quebec, where bagged milk is still part of everyday grocery life. In other provinces, cartons and jugs fill the fridge the same way. But the moment you look behind that simple glass of milk, you see a much larger system: dairy farms, feed costs, processing plants, refrigeration, fuel, trucks, store labor, and a steady cold chain from farm to fridge. When one part of that system becomes more expensive or less reliable, milk prices can move quickly. That is where powdered milk earns its place. It is not meant to replace every carton of fresh milk, and in Canada, many families may also prefer shelf-stable UHT milk for drinking. But powdered milk does something different. It gives the kitchen a dry, lightweight, long-lasting backup that does not need refrigeration until it is mixed. A bag or tin from Walmart, Costco, Bulk Barn, Real Canadian Superstore, or an international grocery may look costly at first in Canadian dollars, but once portioned properly, it can support many small uses over time. The value is not only in drinking it. Powdered milk can be mixed into oats, pancakes, muffins, bread, mashed potatoes, cream soups, sauces, coffee, cocoa, smoothies, and simple casseroles. That matters, because many pantry meals become thin when dairy is missing. Oats cooked with water may fill the stomach, but a spoonful of powdered milk adds body, protein, and a more familiar breakfast feeling. Soup made from pantry staples can taste flat, but milk powder can add softness and richness without opening the fridge. For people over 50, this is worth noticing. Milk powder still brings protein, calcium, and often vitamin D, depending on the product. After middle age, maintaining muscle, bone strength, balance, and daily independence becomes more important than many people admit. No single food solves that, of course, but having a steady dairy option at home can protect ordinary meals from becoming too weak when shopping trips are delayed or fresh food becomes expensive. Storage is the detail that decides whether powdered milk becomes useful or wasted. Moisture is the enemy. Once opened, it should be divided into airtight jars, sealed containers, or small mylar bags, then kept in a cool, dry, dark place away from the stove, sink, dishwasher, or damp basement air. Always use a clean, dry spoon. If it smells off, changes color, becomes heavily clumped from moisture, or looks questionable, do not use it. Buying it is easy. Keeping it dry is the real skill. The biggest mistake is treating powdered milk like a punishment food that sits untouched for emergencies. If nobody in the house likes it, it will be forgotten until it expires or tastes stale. The smarter approach is to use it quietly in cooking. Add it to oatmeal once a week. Put it into baking. Mix it into soup. Learn which brand dissolves better and which recipes hide the flavor well. A pantry item becomes reliable only when the household already knows how to use it. In Canada, this matters during winter storms, ice storms, wildfire smoke events, power outages, and weeks when grocery bills feel heavier than expected. Fresh milk is still useful. UHT milk may be easier for many families, but powdered milk gives a different kind of control. It waits dry on the shelf, takes little space, and can rescue breakfast, baking, and comfort food when the fridge cannot. It is not glamorous. It is not a miracle product.
It is simply a practical backup that helps a Canadian kitchen stay flexible when prices, weather, and routines stop cooperating. For a household trying to spend carefully, that kind of small buffer can prevent one missing ingredient from turning into another expensive, unnecessary trip through the supermarket aisles, especially during cold, busy, fixed income weeks.
3. Peanut butter. A jar of peanut butter in Canada may not look dramatic, but it can quietly carry a lot of value. Depending on the brand and size, one jar from Walmart, Costco, No Frills, Real Canadian Superstore, or Sobeys can hold thousands of calories and a useful amount of fat and protein. Compare that with one takeout meal that can cost far more in Canadian dollars and disappear in one evening. Peanut butter is not just a snack. It is a shelf-stable energy buffer that needs no cooking, no water, no fridge, and no electricity. The uncomfortable truth is that many pantries look full, but are too heavy on cheap carbohydrates. Pasta, crackers, cereal, noodles, and bread can make the cupboard feel safe, but calories alone do not make a strong food system. Carbohydrates give quick energy. Fat helps that energy last longer, makes meals more satisfying, and helps people avoid constantly searching for something else to eat. A pantry with no dependable fat source can look impressive and still feel weak when real stress arrives. This matters even more when grocery budgets tighten. Many Canadian households, especially people living on pensions or fixed incomes, naturally reach for the cheapest items per serving. That is understandable. But many of those foods are mainly starch. They fill the stomach, then hunger returns too quickly. That is when a jar of peanut butter can prevent a small problem from becoming an expensive one. Toast with peanut butter, a spoonful stirred into oats, or peanut butter with crackers or apple slices can stop a tired evening from turning into delivery or another rush trip through the store. Peanut butter also fits Canadian emergencies better than people think. During a winter power outage, an ice storm, wildfire evacuation, or a day when the fridge cannot be trusted, ready-to-eat food becomes valuable. You do not need a stove. You do not need clean pots. You do not even need much appetite. For older adults, that matters. Some days the body does not want a heavy meal, but it still needs energy. A small amount of peanut butter can add calories, plant-based protein, vitamin E, magnesium, and a familiar taste that feels comforting rather than clinical. Its flexibility is another strength. Peanut butter can go on bread, toast, crackers, apples, bananas, or rice cakes. It can be mixed into oatmeal, blended into smoothies, used in sauces, added to baking, or eaten by the spoon when cooking feels like too much work. It helps fight food boredom, which is one of the quietest reasons stored food fails. People may have food in the house, but if everything tastes dry, plain, and repetitive, they stop wanting to eat it. Storage is simple. Keep unopened jars in a cool, dry place away from sunlight and heat. After opening, close the lid tightly. Use a clean spoon and watch for any strange smell, taste, or separation that seems unusual. Do not buy fancy versions nobody in the house will eat. Choose a practical jar, rotate it, and avoid waste. Peanut butter is not for anyone with a peanut allergy, and portions still matter. But for many Canadian homes, it remains one of the strongest pantry foods. Affordable, familiar, filling, and ready when the kitchen cannot operate normally for many ordinary weeks. 2. RICE. In 2008, global rice prices surged quickly, and several countries restricted exports to protect their own supplies. Shelves emptied faster than many families expected. The lesson was simple. When uncertainty grows, people return to foundational foods, not gold, not technology, just rice. Just. For a Canadian kitchen, rice makes sense because it is easy to understand, easy to portion, and usually cheaper per meal than many processed foods. A large 8 to 10 kilogram bag from Costco, no frills, Walmart, real Canadian superstore, T&T, or an Asian grocery can provide a serious amount of energy for the cost. Rice is not the highest protein food and is not a complete nutrition plan by itself, but as a base, it helps stretch almost everything else in the pantry. That is where its real power sits. Rice turns separate ingredients into meals. Beans become rice and beans. Canned salmon becomes a filling bowl. Eggs, frozen vegetables, lentils, soup, chicken, sardines, or leftovers all become more useful when there is rice underneath them. This is why so many cultures rely on it. Rice does not need to be exciting. It simply has to work. And it has worked for generations. Financially, rice gives households control when grocery bills feel heavier. While many packaged foods shrink, boxes get smaller, and prices quietly rise, rice remains one of the easiest foods to measure. You can see how much you have, estimate how many meals it can support, and portion it without much guesswork. For people over 50, especially anyone living on a fixed income, that predictability matters. Variety is nice. Predictability keeps the kitchen calm. Storage is the part people cannot ignore. White rice stores far better than brown rice because brown rice contains more natural oils and can turn rancid sooner. If you buy a large bag and leave it in a damp basement, hot garage, or open cupboard, insects, moisture, and odors can ruin it. A smarter approach is to divide rice into airtight containers, food-grade buckets, or mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. Then keep it in a cool, dry, dark place. Rice is not perfect. It needs water, heat, and something else beside it to become a balanced meal. But as an energy foundation, it is hard to beat. Peanut butter brings fat. Beans bring protein. Salt brings balance. Oats bring quick breakfasts. Milk powder supports nutrition. Rice holds the system together. In a Canadian pantry, it is not about panic buying. It is about having a dependable base when weather, prices, or supply chains make ordinary shopping less predictable. If your pantry has rice already, the real question is whether it is stored well enough to protect what you paid for today.
1. Dry beans.
In 2020, Canadians saw how quickly ordinary grocery shelves could change. During periods of supply disruption and uncertainty, many shoppers noticed something surprising. It was not only expensive foods that disappeared first. In some stores, simple bags of dry beans became harder to find because people were looking for foods that could stretch a household budget while still providing real nutrition.
That reaction revealed an important truth. When families become concerned about costs, they often return to practical staples that deliver the most value for the money.
Dry beans remain one of the strongest examples. A 1 kilogram bag provides a large amount of food, plenty of plant-based protein, fiber, and important nutrients, such as folate, potassium, and magnesium. Compared with many animal proteins, beans often remain one of the most affordable sources of protein available. When grocery bills rise and households begin watching every dollar, that advantage becomes difficult to ignore. Protein matters because calories alone are not enough. Many pantries contain cereal, crackers, noodles, snacks, and other foods that provide energy but limited long-term nutritional support. As people age, maintaining muscle strength, balance, and daily independence becomes increasingly important. Having a dependable source of protein at home is not about preparing for disaster. It is about building a more resilient kitchen. Beans also fit naturally into everyday Canadian cooking. They work in soups, stews, chili, salads, rice dishes, and many family recipes. One ingredient can support dozens of meals, helping reduce food boredom while stretching other pantry items further. Storage is straightforward. Keep beans in a cool, dry place away from moisture and insects. For longer storage, airtight containers or mylar bags with oxygen absorbers work well. Although beans require cooking time, soaking them beforehand or using a pressure cooker can make preparation much easier. What makes beans valuable is not excitement or convenience. It is their ability to provide affordable protein, dependable nutrition, long storage life, and flexibility in one simple package. A pantry full of food may help you feel secure. A pantry with enough protein helps support health, strength, and stability over the long term for many years ahead.
After looking at these 6 foods through a Canadian lens, the main point is not which one feels the most exciting. It is which one helps the kitchen keep working when prices rise, weather interrupts routines, or shopping becomes less predictable. Iodized salt supports balance and makes simple meals edible. Powdered milk adds nutrition and flexibility when fresh dairy is unavailable or too costly. Oats create a warm breakfast with little fuel.
Peanut butter provides fat, energy, and comfort without cooking. Dry beans protect long-term protein. Rice gives the whole pantry a steady foundation. A smart pantry is not built by buying everything on sale or filling shelves until there is no space left. It is built by understanding which foods support the others. In a Canadian home, preparation should not feel like panic. It should feel like fewer rushed trips, fewer expensive surprises, and more control during winter storms, heat waves, wildfire disruptions, or tight grocery weeks.
The best pantry does not make life dramatic. It makes life calmer. Of these 6 foods, if you could keep only one in your kitchen for the long term, which one would you choose today?